Shay family, welcome back to another episode of my Unapologetic Perspective. This is the podcast where we give our point of view of controversial topics from our perspective, from Black history and our experience as African Americans. This is the podcast where we talk about Black history that's not taught in schools. This is the podcast where we talk about Black news that you won't watch on your daily news channel. And this is the podcast where we champion Black culture and Black excellence. So if you're on the channel and you don't like hearing black, you might want to exit stage left because this ain't the podcast for you. I am your host, Martre Baker Stevens, and to the right of me is Shaquan Battle.
Hello.
And to the right of him is Jerome Battle.
What's up?
We appreciate all the love and support we've been getting over the course of a year and a half, how much our channel has grown, how much the social media has grown, how much interaction we've been getting on the podcast and the comments. Much love. We appreciate every last comment, every last like, every last share, every last subscribe. So what we start with, let's go into the sports department. let's take it to Shaquan to the sports department. That's what we starting at. Deion Sanders, baby, what's happening?
I'm coming.
For sure.
I'm coming. Do you believe?
He here.
He here.
He here.
The crazy part is the underdog that they had them going in against TCU. Now I know TCU had just played in the national championship,
They got spanked.
They got smoked. But I heard a lot of sports podcasts. I've seen a lot of videos of saying, "Hey, I like what Deion doing, but it ain't gonna work against TCU." And he had them boys ready. Yeah, I mean, like we said before the podcast started, they got to clean up a couple things on the run defense, but outside of that, they look legit.
Right.
But what really surprised me was seeing analysts saying they didn't know Shedur Sanders was that good.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me because, for years, people have said that HBCU athletic programs weren't up to the level of Division I or Division II, college football, college basketball, what have you. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people think no matter how good they may have thought he was, that he wasn't playing against really good people.
Right.
So I think now exposing that TCU was ranked. A lot of people, this thing people going to keep forgetting about is we're not just talking about TCU. TCU was ranked.
Right.
Yeah.
They won't be now. But at the end of the day, they were willing to compete. And that's really all you want kids to do is compete. Be competitive. Go out, give me everything you got, and then a little bit more. And if you do that, two things going to happen. One, you're going to have some fun.
Yeah.
And two, you could possibly win a game that people didn't think you could win.
Yeah. You said something a few weeks ago at the football game, and you was like, look at the difference in how the kids are responding to the coach.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And when you look at Colorado's never been a football school.
That's right.
They've never really had anything to, be to celebrate about when it came to football. And when you look at what Deion was able to do in a short time period, because you hear commentators, you hear analysts talking about, oh, he's tearing Colorado down. All of the kids that were there before are now gone. Look what he's doing. And the kids that stayed after the speech that he gave, that responded to what he said, and the kids that gravitated towards the way that Deion talked, the way he backs it up, and the way he's going to push his players, that's important. Absolutely. And the reason why I know a lot of people are like, oh, they jumped on the Colorado bandwagon. It's not about Colorado. It's about supporting, again, another African American in a position. Name 2 college football coaches that are African American other than Deion. Most people can't.
That's right.
Most people can't. I can't even think off the top of my head right now. Somebody might be like, oh yeah, old boy at such and such school, but they can't give you the name of the coach.
That's right.
They can't do it like they say a Nick Saban. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They can't do it like that. But to see Deion in that position early, and they may struggle a little bit of times during this year, but to see that early and to see him say, yo, I kept the receipts on that, whatever, on everything everybody said. On everything everybody said about my sons, on everything that somebody said about Travis Hunter. Like, we kept all the receipts. And they proved it. So shout out to Deion, shout out to the Colorado boys, and shout out to all of the kids that responded to the message. You can have a good coach, but the players that respond to the message, fire.
That's the funny part is the first big play in yesterday's game was by a kid that was the only one that stayed. That's right. The middle linebacker that got the interception.
That's right. We talk about this many times on this podcast. If you go back to the Indiana days, Bobby Knight days of Indiana, a lot of the kids went to Indiana. Most of the kids went to Indiana to play for Bobby Knight.
Right.
They didn't give a damn about Indiana Hoosiers.
Right.
They went to play for Bobby Knight. If I can play for the best, then that says a lot about who I am, right? A lot of those kids want to play for Deion because whether people like it or not, Deion was one of the best to ever do it.
Right.
And you would not have what you have now in terms of college sports where people can get paid for their image and likeness if not for people like Deion Sanders. Could you imagine if he could have did that in college? Could you imagine the amount of money that he would have made before he even stepped foot on the NFL football field?
Right.
So people like Deion has created a lot of these things that we see that you will never give, nobody's ever going to give him credit for.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you now have them educating athletes before they start doing interviews. That didn't happen before Deion. Deion had to do that himself. But now you have them educating these young guys and women before they do interviews, especially right after the game on ESPN. They're teaching them. Yeah. And that's what Deion's doing. The thing Deion says that I think he's doing that I think people got to really take notice of. Once again, he's attracting that attention that you need. If you think back, you guys probably remember the end of it, but during Mike Tyson's era, the thing that he did is he created an avenue of media frenzy that people wanted to see. They wanted to buy into it. Half the people that started watching Mike Tyson fight were women, and they all wanted to see him lose, only because of the rape that he did get convicted of, and then other rape allegations that he did not even get charged with. Women wanted to see him lose. So he created this avenue. That's what's happening with Deion right now. Half the people that watched that game yesterday was not hoping that Deion won.
Right.
They were watching because they wanted him to lose so they can come out Monday morning and go, told you so.
Right.
Didn't get that.
And so they could come out and kill that transfer portal.
Oh, absolutely.
We know how much college football hate that. But what I mostly love about what Deion is doing is, so he had his sons at IMG for high school or prep. Then they go to Jackson State. They successful there. Then he moves them to Colorado. And then the press conference that they introduce him, he says, I have your quarterback with me, which lets you know, I already know what my son can do.
That's right.
And I think that's the part that a lot of these football analysts get wrong is we're talking about not even arguably the greatest football player ever. You think his sons are not going to be, you think he can't see talent?
That's right.
You know, he already know both of his sons have whatever it takes, but not only do he take both of his sons that play football, but then his son, Deion Sanders Jr., shoots all their social media stuff. The daughter has transferred to Colorado to play basketball. That's and right. If you look at the video that they posted yesterday on their YouTube page, all of the staff that comes out of the tunnel, he didn't have the money for that at Jackson State.
That's right.
He has the money, and Colorado said we don't have the $27 million to give Deion, but I tell you what, we're gonna go get it.
They're gonna go get it.
Yeah. So shout out to Deion, shout out to them, shout out to Coco. Coco got me watching tennis again. Shout out to Coco.
What's the black guy's name? I forgot his name.
You talking about the dude who be wearing the Bill jersey?
Yeah,
I forgot his name. But shout out to Coco. You know, Coco was in a long match, and the girl was deliberately taking long, and you know, Coco was telling the ref what the rules were. She, you know,
that's right.
She went over there and told her what the rules were. There's another video of Coco on the tennis court dancing while her mom's in the stands dancing, and she's just bringing that black culture and that energy, being herself to the tennis court. That's fire. The same thing Sha'Carri Richardson is doing on the track. You know what I'm saying? She kept the receipts of all the people who was down on her a couple years ago, and she came back and and better than ever. So shout out to
Simone Biles.
Simone Biles came back, fire again. You know what I'm saying? Doing something that nobody has ever done. Every time she pop out, she does something that nobody has ever done, and
That's right.
That's fire.
I'm gonna tell you what I love about Sha'Carri is when she lost, you heard all of the other runners, you know, say you need to focus more on track and all this other stuff. And when it was her turn to stand on that podium, it was almost like they wanted her to return with grace.
Yeah.
Versus saying, okay, I got better and I beat y'all. Now what do y'all need to do?
Right.
And that's her being that young and to be able to come back from this the social media blast. Cause I mean they was blasting on social media when she started losing. But for her to come back and make that redemption story like that, that's amazing.
That's absolutely fire. That's fire. What y'all want to talk about next? Where y'all want to go to? What you got over there?
Oh man,
let's go. What you got?
It was another one of those weeks, man. It seemed like every time we had this podcast,
It's almost it's like a broken record, right?
We're carrying, you know, and I'm gonna make a few statements first, man. You know, of course, with a lot of racial tension in America, and every day, a lot of it fueled by police brutality, targeted against blacks, egregious and unprovoked in most situations. Actions of police only to go without indictment. And even when there is an indictment and they go to court, all white juries getting found not guilty. It still amazes me that white people still don't think this exists at all, let alone to the degree that we talk about it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you read some of the comments or some of the things that people are saying, they think we're making this up. The length that white America has went through to keep us down. So you according to you go to Africa, you bring us here for the first time, which we know is not true, but you bring us here.
Yep.
You enslave us. That was your choice. You did that. And then as we begin to contribute, all of a sudden, you need us. You need us to go fight your wars for you. Mm-hmm. You need us to be part of that process. And to stop the war, you had a president that said, I'm going to abolish slavery. Not because he disagreed with it, but because I got to win the war. We had no stake in that. That's something you did. So you do that. You free us. So you say, okay, that's not going to work. So you have Jim Crow laws. And we outlast that. And then you redlining, black codes, civil rights movement, where we were simply fighting for what was already ours, and you said, no, I'm not gonna let you do it. To keep us in a certain place. Why? Yeah. I don't get it. And I ask the question all the time, why do white people hate blacks? Why? And you hear people say, black people are lazy, they're thugs. Black FedEx driver, delivering packages. He's working. He's not lazy. He works. Yeah. He's delivering packages. He drops off the packages. Another house, two white guys come out and confront him. Want to know what is he doing in their neighborhood? He's delivering packages. They shoot at him. He flees. They arrest the two guys. Take him to court. There's a mistrial because the officer did not reveal all the evidence that he had to the prosecution and the defense. All white jury, police officers white, the FedEx driver's black. So here's a case of he's not lazy, he's working, and you still discriminate against him. Yeah. I don't get it. Why do you hate us so much? You say, raise your kids better. That's one of the comments, right? Raise your kids better. Marissa Alexander, raising her kids in Florida. White racist lady don't want the kids playing in front of her building.
Not even hers.
Not even hers.
I guess technically, yeah.
Yeah. Hers. And she basically verbally abuses the kids and throws an object and hits one of the kids. Mother goes over. She shoots the mom through the door. Mother raising her 4 kids. She's doing that. You said raise your kids better. She's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good enough. You kill her.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you kill her. They don't even charge her with murder. She shot her through the door. They charged the lady with manslaughter instead.
Mm-hmm.
So two of the things that you claim you hate us for, we do, and you still discriminate against us. I don't understand. You say your kids need to be educated. Well, we do that. We send them to school every day. But you want to change the curriculum because you don't like what they're teaching and how it portrays you. Mm-hmm. So you want to change that. This I want to be more specific for this one. Because it's in Florida, elementary school. I want to be specific. Let me find it. Elementary school. Because the standard test scores were low, they pulled all the black kids out into an assembly in the cafeteria.
Sure did.
And said, your test scores were low. Not the white kids. Even the white kids that had low scores weren't included in this. I think the percentile is 61% white, 19% black in the school. Pulled all the black kids out and said, your test scores are low. And we need to do something about it. Had them read something that said, the problem is, and it was African Americans do not read and write on the level that they should. And that if you do not, you could end up shot, killed, or in jail. And just like in the case of anything else, this is not enough for white America. They got to go further. You think that's enough? They went further and said, even bribed them with fast food gift cards to perform better. So we can give you a gift card to McDonald's if you can do better. Is this America? I mean, the first thing I thought is this you got to be kidding me. But this is elementary school. We talked about this before in this podcast. Black people aren't generally racist. We don't, as a group, we don't target white people.
Right.
I want everybody to listen. I want you to just Google search. And I'm not saying everything you'll find on Google is going to be accurate, but I want you to Google search any instance where a group of black people said, let's go beat up white people. Let's go kill white people. Even back in the slave revolts, the objective was freedom. Mm-hmm. We didn't care who the master was. The color didn't matter to us. Freedom was the objective. So never in the history of this country has black people as a group, as a race, decided that we're going to go out and harm white people.
Just because you're white.
Just because you're white.
Yeah.
Even in the case of the people that probably thinking this, not even the Black Panthers.
No.
The Black Panthers said pigs.
Mm-hmm.
They did not say white pigs.
Mm-hmm.
They said pigs. That's all cops. All cops.
All races.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter. We've never done that. But white people do it on a daily basis. Every day we continue to hear about these police departments from released texts, recordings, where you have officers, high-ranking officials in law enforcement, talking about their hatred and despise for black people. And in cases where they arrest them, they do it knowingly. We're pulling them over at a higher rate. We do it intentionally. We're even lying on them. We have provoked confessions where they're making them confess the things that they didn't do. They're openly talking about this. Mm-hmm. And most of the time it goes without retribution. So for white America that thinks that we're making this up, where are we getting this? Where are we getting this? We're getting this from daily events that happen every day. This is what happens every day. People seem to think that after George Floyd that this was over. Mm-hmm. It's not over. It continues to happen, probably at a higher rate. Just Thursday? Takia Young, black lady, in a car. Police officers confronted her about stealing alcohol from a store. She's in a car. She's pregnant. Officers at one door, another officer's in front of the car. She said, I ain't steal shit. Even asked her, what are you going to do, shoot me?
Yeah.
That's what they did. As she tried to turn her car, officers run her car. I'm trying to leave. She tries to steer her wheel away from the officer. Officer shoots and kills her. She's pregnant. 2 lives lost over allegedly stealing alcohol.
Allegedly, right?
Drives me crazy, man. And you just don't hear about these kind of. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm not saying that at all. Sure, it happens to white people. It happens. When we use the word disproportionately, that's what we're talking about. Disproportionate. And you're going to hear some white people say, well, black people commit crimes at a higher rate. Bullshit. But let's say that they do. Has anybody ever thought about why? What are the circumstances? What are the conditions that make black people more prone to commit crimes than white people?
Poverty is high. I mean, poverty is high wherever there's crime.
Absolutely. Do you really believe that there's something genealogically about us, anatomically about us, physiology about us, psychologically about us, that make us more prone to commit crime than whites?
Right.
Of course
right. Go to a black middle class neighborhood and see if there's crime there.
Absolutely.
Most of the time it's not going to be.
Absolutely.
There's no poverty there.
Yes. So it's not affiliated with race. It's the conditions that America have put the black race in continuously. And they do it daily. They remind us of it daily. So for all those people that think that we're racist, for all those people that think we should do something different than what we're doing, I want you to think about that. Why do you hate us so much that you even got to disagree with us?
Yeah.
What is it about us that makes you do that?
As Frederick Douglass said, do nothing with us.
Exactly.
That quote has just been sticking in my head. Just do nothing with us.
That's right.
Stop trying to deflect and stop trying to tell us what we need to do. Like, how about you take accountability for your ancestors' actions in the systematic way that things are continuing?
That's right.
How about that, right? There was another story. There was another video I actually saw. There was a black kid, as you talked about. There was a black kid standing outside of a store, and he had his own candy set up. And an older white lady is sitting there telling the black kid he needs to be ashamed of himself and that all this other stuff, he shouldn't be out there doing that. And another guy comes out of nowhere and was like, yo, what you got? He like, candy. He like, I want you to tally all of that up because I'm buying all of it. And she starts getting mad at the person that's buying it. He's like, look, you talking about a kid right here who's out here trying to do the right thing. And yeah, you out here berating this kid for no reason at all. And one of the comments she said was, you don't know how they are. You don't know how they are, where they come from and how they live. Like, what does that have to do with a kid out here trying to do something positive, trying to make money the right way? And if he would have went in the store and stole the candy, then you would have had something to say. Exactly. But if he out there selling candy the right way, now you got a problem with it.
Try not to be not being lazy, not being that thug that you claim that you hate us for.
For sure. I'm gonna start with the ancestors talking, y'all. The ancestors is talking.
Come on.
You know what I mean? And what I mean by the ancestors talk, what up, y'all? Y'all good? Anybody know I got the ancestors worship over here? You know what I mean? Y'all good? Because we hear you talking. And what I mean by that is a 23-year-old drowned in Lake Lanier. And a 61-year-old, in July, a 61-year-old and a 27-year-old actually didn't resurface in Lake Lanier. A few days before, another man drowned and was electrocuted in Lake Lanier. And per report, since the 80s, there's been like over 100 and something drownings by boat or by swimming in Lake Lanier. For the people who don't understand why that's important when it comes to why the ancestors are talking, it's because Lake Lanier used to be called Oscarville. It was a black community. And this black community was thriving until, of course, 3 teenagers were accused of raping and killing a white woman. And they ended up taking one of the teenagers, drug him out of the jail, beat him with a crowbar, and hung him. And the other 2 teenagers, they ended up they was found guilty and hung. And then the white mob went to the black community and burned down the schools and the churches, and basically about 1,000 black people had to flee the land. and they ended up building Lake Lanier over top of that land. So when now you got drownings happening in that land because the ancestors are speaking.
That's right.
Eddie Griffin did a comedy bit in where he used to talk about how if you look at the coast of Africa where hurricanes start at, and the places and the way that it travels, it ends up in the same place the transatlantic slave trade stopped at, in the Caribbean islands and places like Florida and those type of places. The ancestors are talking.
That's right.
We hear you. We hear you. The ancestors is talking, not only through that, but the ancestors are talking through us. You have to understand, when people say you guys should move towards the future and stop talking about history. No. There's history that needs to be told because they didn't have the right to tell their history. Right. They were killed for even trying to write about their history or try to tell their side of the story. They were killed before they could tell their side of the story. They couldn't speak out and speak up as we do today on here on this podcast. So we are the bodies for our ancestors' voices to begin to speak about the atrocities that happen in history. We have to talk about it because it's important. It's their story. It's our story. So for the people who say, oh, you were never enslaved. No. My ancestors were. That's right. I'm the voice of my ancestors. I am my ancestors. I stand on the shoulder of my ancestors. Everything I am is because of my ancestors. So when I go back and I talk about certain things, it's not for you. It's for them. That's right. And that's where we at as a people, where the ancestors are beginning to speak. And we're listening.
That's right. I agree. What you got?
I was laughing because I had seen that video about Lake Lanier, about it flooding.
White people always say that when we say white people, we include all white people. Not all white people are prejudice. Not all white people, right? Which is true. But yet you say all black people are lazy, right? There's no separation when it comes to how you group us, but you want us to group you differently. Why? See, that's that white privilege, and they don't understand that that's the privilege. That's part of the privilege that we keep talking about, is that you think you can say whatever you want, and we have guidelines we gotta adhere to. We got rules we gotta adhere to, rules that and guidelines that you made that we gotta adhere to. No. Those days are over. We're no longer adhering to those guidelines and those rules. The unequal education, housing, employment opportunities, and economic and financial advancement, or just having the resources to be able to do better for yourself in the black community. Those days of not having the ability to get those things are going to come to an end. Mm-hmm. It's going to come to an end. See, white America doesn't care for us. They decided a long time ago that they didn't care for us by the fact that they put us over and enslaved us. Mm-hmm. And then through Jim Crow, redlining, black codes, even up to the civil rights movement in the 60s, that we weren't worthy of the things that they were worthy of. They've already shown us that they don't care for us. They don't care for us in the sense that in certain places, the one thing that you would think that they would want, which is money, is that you go into an establishment in the South and they don't even want your money. That's a hard level of hatred for a person based on race. So for them to say that racism does not exist to that level, explain that. And then tell me, why is that?
Yeah.
How can that happen and you not associate that with race?
Right.
So time and time again, every time you have a influential black that moves up in at least listening power, where people are listening to him, they assassinate him. Mm-hmm. To the point that even when you have a white person that is trying to, for whatever reason may be, enhance the rights and privileges of blacks, they assassinate him too. He ain't even black. He can't even help us. And they kill him. So that tells you the level of hatred that white America has for us. And it doesn't end. I think that at the end of the day, we have to understand what Malcolm X says is true. There has to be a time when Black people are intellectually going to think for themselves and then begin to think like a Black person, and that all Black people will begin to think that way and unite. Once that happens, then you have the ability to force change. But we have to do that first. There would be no reason for that if the conditions that we need to enforce that didn't exist. So we know racism exists. Even though white America will deny it, they know it exists. But when they admit it, that means that they're racist too. And they don't want to admit that. So we have to continue to talk about it.
Yeah. Speaking of Malcolm X, white America, we not gonna let y'all do this.
That's right.
We're not gonna let y'all do this. What they've been doing on social media, Pops, I know you don't be on social media like that, but what they've been doing on social media is they've been taking a Malcolm X quote about talking about the liberals. And they post that and say, see, Malcolm X even hated liberals. He was conservative. Bro, if you listen to Malcolm X fully, y'all, we're not going to let y'all do this. He did not fuck with either one of y'all. He did not trust either one of y'all.
He's telling you the truth that Democrat or Republican, you can be, and it exists, racist.
We're not going to let y'all whitewash Malcolm X like y'all tried to do with Dr. King. He did not fuck with either one of y'all. Right. Stop trying to do that, bro. Y'all be pissing me off when I be saying that. I be commenting. Y'all never respond to my comment. Y'all be responding to everybody else. Y'all be pissing me off. I want to go back and I want to talk about something because I believe what this episode is going, we're talking about just the value of Black life. And when you go back and look, Wall Street was the city's first official slave market, where they sold and rented enslaved Africans.
In Fredericksburg, Virginia.
In Fredericksburg, Virginia, and in New York, of course, Wall Street. At one point in time, New York had the most slaves out of all of the colonies.
That's right.
But when a slave owner didn't have any work for his slave, they would send them down to the meat market, which is right below Wall Street, and you could be purchased or rented out for work. So on Wall Street today, we see stocks and bonds. On Wall Street back then was stocks in bondage. Those were the first stocks and bonds was enslaved Africans.
That's right.
And you're talking about insurance companies having policies on enslaved Black people. You're talking about banks that accepted enslaved Africans as collateral. So whenever a slave owner didn't pay his debt, that enslaved African now belongs to the bank, probably J.P. Morgan. You know what I mean? So when you look at it, you're talking about how we look at stocks and bonds and finances today. We look at it as assets or liabilities.
That's right.
And back then, enslaved Africans were assets and liabilities. Because what is the asset? If I have an asset is a young woman because she's young, so she can bear me children.
That's right.
That's an asset. Because if she bears children, that gives me more slaves to be able to have it. A liability is an older African. Because he's probably not going to be the healthiest.
That's right.
He's not going to be able to work the hardest.
That's right.
So he's going to be a liability to me. An asset is an enslaved person who I could baptize that follows the Christian faith that say slavery is what I need to be in.
I can control you.
Yeah. Liability is the African that knew what freedom felt like.
And wanted
it back again. So that's going to cost me money. So on the slave markets, whenever they would do slave auctions, they would look at things like their teeth. Look at the teeth to see how healthy you are. They would look if you're a young man. Let's see how strong you are. Let's see if you got any lashes on you from your last owner. If you ain't got no lashes on you, that means you're a good boy. You ain't gonna step out of line. If you got lashes on you, he may be a problem, which means we'll have to lower the cost on you. You know what I mean? We're looking to see if you got any wounds or any scars, because if you got wounds or scars, that means in Africa you probably was a warrior, which means you got that mindset that you're willing to fight. We have to take all that into the consideration. So when you talk about assets and liabilities, the value of Black life, the way it's looked at in America is either you're going to make me money or I don't care what happens.
That's right.
Because what happened with George Floyd, and the reason why Black Lives Matter, the statement was so big is because when George Floyd died, was killed or murdered, the people who looked at George Floyd's life felt like he wasn't a person that we should be talking about.
That's right.
Like he wasn't valuable.
Fact.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? He isn't the person that's making us money. He isn't a leader in the community.
Right.
He isn't doing any of that. So his life is not valuable
He was a
like that.
liability.
He was a liability.
Liability.
You know what I'm
That's
saying?
right.
So if you look at situations like that, and you look at even a rapper, you know, you talked about it on this podcast before. If a rapper is killed, nobody cares because we have insurance policies for that, and we can still make money off that rapper. Nobody
That's right.
cares. But if a person that is killed that makes us money, then things change. The mindset changed, which is another conversation with mass incarceration, because
That's
no
right.
longer are we executing people just for their life, because we can make money off those people now,
Right.
and pay them 50 cents a day, and then we can make $1 billion business just by having them incarcerated
That's
for
right.
the rest of their life.
That's right.
This is a business. So when you talk about the value of Black life, Black lives has never been valued to the point where if it has nothing to do with white America, that is valuable.
That's right.
That's why you can kill a Malcolm X. This is why you can
Kill
deport
Martin
deport a Marcus Garvey. This is why you can do all of those things, because if they don't have value to white America, they're still not important. They had something back in slavery and then after slavery called Battle Royal. Are you familiar with Battle Royal?
Just Warzone.
Battle Royal is, they used to put 4 to 30 children in a ring and blindfold them and fight to the last person standing
That's right.
for the amusement of white America, for the entertainment of white America, to dehumanize and degrade the children that you put in there for a $4 reward if you won. In slavery, they used to have, they called it free for all. They would give you this sheet, they would fill it up with cotton, and it would weigh about 10 pounds, and you fought each other with that until the last person was standing. The degrading of this, and they continued this on even into the military. They had black soldiers doing this as well. Matter of fact, Jack Johnson actually came from Battle Royal.
That's right.
Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion of the world, came from Black Royal. He fought professionally for over 30 years.
Mhm.
And after he fought professionally for over 30 years, he actually won the heavyweight championship after beating Tommy Burns. And then after he beat Tommy Burns, white America said, wait a minute, there's no way a black man is better than a white man at boxing and fighting. So they brought James Jeffries out of retirement, the Great White Hope. That's where that came from, the Great White Hope. And Jack Johnson beat the snot out of him. And after he beat the snot out of him, white America got pissed off, went to black communities and killed black people. Race riot, just because
That's right.
Jack Johnson beat the shit out of somebody. And you talk about just the dehumanization of that. And then you talk about the racism that we faced in this country, even while fighting for this country. During World War II, America captured over close to 1 million Germans and Italians and had them as war prisoners here in America. And the black soldiers said they treated better than we treated. They can go into white-only establishments and eat and drink and all of these things and have the privileges and the rights that even us African Americans don't have, and we wearing the same uniform as them.
Yep.
We don't get that same treatment. I'm going to read something from the Vietnam War and from the World Wars. This is the hypocrisy that we talk about when it comes to white America. When you go fight in another country, whether it's World War II fighting Germany for the Nazi racists that they were against the Jews, or if you're talking about what happened in Vietnam, they were going to fight for somebody else's freedom while depriving African Americans of their freedom here.
Absolutely.
Here's the part. The other countries knew it. And they left pamphlets and messages for black soldiers all the time. One of the messages left in Vietnam said that you are committing the same crimes in South Vietnam that the KKK is perpetrating against your family at home.
That's right.
That's what they left to a black soldier. In the Korean War, they left a message that said, Negro soldiers, Did you ever stop to think why you should be in Korea fighting other colored people while lynchings, murders, and insults pile up against the Negro people at home? They tell you are defending freedom here. What kind of freedom? Since the Korean War began, there have been more lynchings and killings in all parts of the country than ever before. Morris Scott shot by a white man in Linden, Alabama. Samuel Ellis, Philadelphia Navy veteran, shot by a rookie cop in the subway. Willie Carlisle's beaten to death by a cop in Alabama. Sam Jones and California construction worker beaten to death by another cop. Willie McGee put on an electric chair in Mississippi on a frame-up charge. Harry Moore, of NAACP leader, bombed in bed by the Klan in Florida. These are only a few from the South and the North and the East and the West, and you here in Korea fighting for freedom. The Germans left them a message. The Germans left them a message of a story of two black dudes going into a white church in Harlem because they heard the music from outside and said, we want to go in there and praise the Lord, and ended up being a white church. And they told this was their message to the black soldiers. The white people in the USA do not allow you to pray in their churches, although you are American citizens. In Germany, anything like this will be impossible. Colored people living in Germany can always go to any church they like. They have never been a problem to the Germans. They have never been lynchings of colored men in Germany. They have always been treated decently, so you don't have to be afraid. So you don't have to be afraid of the Germans. You need to be afraid of the United States. And these are the type of things that was left for our brothers and sisters who went on the front lines fighting and then come back home and the GI Bill doesn't even apply to them. That further separated the wealth gap. And for the people who don't know what the GI Bill was, it's for veterans who come home and they have access to funds for education, unemployment, insurance, and housing. This is how a lot of white people bought houses after the war because of the GI Bill that black people weren't able to buy. You know, you're talking about in the Vietnam War, we were disproportionately sent to the front lines, but we were disciplined at a higher rate disproportionately when it came to certain issues. Same thing as today. There are military veterans today would tell you in the military, black people are more likely to be pushed up on charges and given longer sentences by when they're arrested.
That's right. Absolutely.
Black soldiers returning for war faced violence that they did not face in Europe. When they went to Europe, Europe praised them. They praised the black soldiers. They came back home and they were faced with white mobs that hated them to see them in uniform. They hated the fact that you think you equal. Yep. They hated the fact that you were able to go over there and mingle with white people and thought you were going to come home and do the same thing. No, they hated you for that. It was so bad that even when they were when they was on trains going to the South to go to their training spot, they had to cover up the windows to stop white people from throwing rocks at the windows because they seen blacks in uniform. In 1946, Isaac Woodward, a black veteran who served in the Pacific Theater, after getting into an argument with a bus driver from Georgia to South Carolina in uniform, was ordered off the bus in a town in Leesville, South Carolina, and beaten so badly with a billy club by the police that he was permanently blind. John C. Jones, a black veteran, was lynched in Louisiana because he was accused of looking at a young white woman. Two other black veterans, Richard Gordon and Alonzo Brooks, was murdered in Marshall, Texas after a labor dispute with their with their white employers. And you're talking about people who put on a uniform to serve this country, to attempt to get some type of equal justice, to attempt to feel like you're going to look at me like an American. But yet you still look at me, as people say, why is it always about race? Because you look at me as a black American, not an American. There's a stigma that comes with that. The race becomes before the American to you. And you expect us to stop talking about the things that have happened? We literally just had the first 4-star general in the Marines in 2022. First 4-star general. And I think they said out of the 42 4-star generals, only 2 of them are black. And the entire military branch. That's right. So you have no black people representing you, even though we've been fighting since the beginning of this country.
And then treated unfairly when we come
back. Still treated unfairly.
All the way back to the Revolutionary War.
No value.
They were saying the same thing to blacks who fought in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
Do you realize what's going to happen if y'all win? And that's exactly what happened. We win, they enslave blacks. So
you fight the war, you're a soldier, and then when you come back home, it's what I said last week, still nigga.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So lately, what's been happening is, and I would imagine it started sometime shortly after the assassination of Martin Luther King. But it's more prevalent now as there's this fun exercise. I enjoy doing this because it's true. White America is reassessing and reanalyzing, rescinding and reneging on civil rights agendas and protections for blacks, things like affirmative action, and then retelling their version of history as it relates to blacks and rendering rejuvenated ideologies and practices, fueling continued hatred and racist attacks on blacks without remorse or retribution in most cases. Yet, we're now being called racist. You can't make this up. As a people, as I said before, there's no history of us as a people attacking white people simply because of race. No history of that whatsoever. We aren't racist, but what we are is resilient. Mm-hmm. As demonstrated in our overcoming slavery, Jim Crow laws, lynching, and mob violence, and the civil rights movement. But we're not racist. We are realizing that we have not come very far since the civil rights movement in the 60s. As racism and discrimination continues, in some ways, more prevalent today as ever before, but we're not racist. We are recognizing that in order to stop these atrocities from continuing to happen, we will need to do more and not rely solely on those that are part of the problem to solve the problem that does not negatively impact them. Why would they? Doesn't impact them, their families, nor people that look like them. But we're not racist. We are recollecting and reciting history truthfully as it pertains to our suffering, loss of culture, loss of life. And the authors of this environment and system of discrimination and hatred and violence directed at Black Americans, and who the perpetrators truly are. But we're not racist. Mm-hmm. We are resistant to any racial inequality, injustice, unfair and discriminatory beliefs and practices of this country. We are rebuilding our principles, our communities, our value, our brand, and our contributions to this country after events such as Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Rosewood, Florida. But we're not racist. We are rising up against police brutality and racist acts of violence against blacks simply because of the color of our skin. Mm-hmm. But we're not racist. We are reaffirming that we are here to stay. America is our country just as much as it is any white person. We are not racist. We are reviving and revitalizing as we continue to move towards equality and fairness, despite the best efforts of America to deny us. Because as Richard Pryor used to say, we taking your best shot, baby. Yeah. And we still here. But we're not racist. We are reclaiming our culture and heritage, that reinstilling the dignity and pride along with the land, wealth, and opportunities that were stripped from us by white America. But we're not racist. We are reuniting and recapturing those components that required us to overcome slavery and Jim Crow laws and lynchings and hatred and violence act towards blacks. And when we unite as a people, you know what we can accomplish. Mm-hmm. That united front against the pearls of white privilege, that way we escaped or overcame slavery. Because there was no, and I will repeat, no benefit for slavery for the black man. Mm-hmm. We are reassembling. We are restructuring. We are reformatting and redesigning our reaction and response to racism. Right. But we're not racist. Mm-hmm.
So in other words, back to the beginning of the podcast, we coming.
We coming.
For sure. Last thing, and then we close. BSI, give me a review. Give me your review. And then give me your review and tell me how that impacts the Black community.
My review is, and I texted to you Friday, was he basically gave, because nobody's black gonna do it and they're not gonna do it the right way. He basically gave the white people the blueprint on how to start a charter school or how to start a prep school. The funny part about that whole documentary was, even though I felt like he was trolling, it was truth in it. Like when the investigator was like, you had to, in order to start a prep school, you have to apply for these things. And the interview cut to the coach or the one that started and was like, you don't gotta do that. Not in the state of Ohio, you don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. So he knew the rules more than the investigator knew the rules. But it was a really good documentary. I think the sad part for me is when it got to the end and you start to see how all of these things that this one man did affected all of these players' lives moving forward and still affect their lives today. You had one kid that wanted to go to a HBCU, but he couldn't. He actually got accepted. And then once they found out that he was a part of that no school thing, they took the offer away and said they couldn't do it. What the least part that I liked about the documentary was he didn't take any accountability. Right. None whatsoever. Even when the players said they had witnessed domestic violence to his girlfriend, he denied that. He basically denied everything but starting school. And he ended the documentary with what he gonna do it again.
I seen somebody say, it might have been on the documentary where he said that Black kids are the only kids you could do that to.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to do that. You wouldn't be able to do that to any other kid. And when I say kids, anybody 21 and under to me is still kids.
Right.
They may not be technically is, but the mindset that if somebody came to you at 20 years old and said, yo, I got an opportunity for you to probably go play college football at the next level, you just need you to do this. At 20 years old, you still game.
Do that.
Right. So that's still a kid mentality. You don't have to wear out the doll to think that if I take out this loan in my name, that it's going to be detrimental to me, moving forward. You know what I'm saying? So the way that he was able to manipulate those kids, that hurts. That hurts, especially coming from our own community of somebody who was just trying to feel like put themselves on the map.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? At the kids' expense. And we see that a lot in youth football too. We see a lot that it's not about the kids. It's about the coaches. It's about them building their resume. It's about them being able to go around and say, oh, we undefeated. Oh, we beat this team by this, that, and the third. Has nothing to do with the discipline that you get to kids. Has nothing to do with the principles that you get to the kids. Has nothing to do with the fight and just the activity that you can give the kids to get them off the street. That's right. It has nothing to do with that. It's about you going around and tell everybody that what your record is and what you do. And what that doesn't matter. Especially in the Black community, when you have these young kids at your disposal, you can lead them in two different directions. Yeah. For some of these kids, you may be their last option. Let's just call it what it is. The parents may fail them, the system may fail them, and the coaches in the community may be their last option to keep them from going left or going right.
And they know that. That's why he said that you can only do this to Black kids.
Yeah.
Because obviously he knows all those components. The biggest one being even if that kid was 18 years old and somebody propositioned him with some of those things, would he have somebody in his circle that could give them direction?
Right.
In opposed to a white kid.
Right.
You're not going to have many people in the Black community in that situation that's going to have enough knowledge or that's not going to mind their business.
Yeah.
Right. To say, no, that's not a good idea. You shouldn't do that.
Right.
They're not going to have that kind of information in that circle. It just doesn't exist.
True. But we thank y'all. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. Peace.